When the Pixel 10 first came out, I said that this was a bad upgrade. I was critical about the price. The cameras, they got downgraded. And then there was the Tensor G5. And weirdly, I've actually never felt so conflicted about a phone. But after 4 months, I feel like I might have changed my mind just a tiny little bit on the Pixel 10. I'm Paul, let's have a look at what this phone is like to use a couple of months later. The last time I took a good look at the Pixel 10, I wasn't convinced that this was a great phone from Google. Sure, it had some nice upgrades like Pixelsnap, which I use all the time, and I still think that this is the best upgrade of the year for the Pixel phones. Then you had the addition of that 5x telephoto lens, which on a base Pixel, I think was great. The main thing holding back the Pixel 10 from being a good phone is the way that Google are pricing it. I know that the Pixel 10 is on sale a lot, so most people are never going to pay the $799 that Google start this at, but at $799, I genuinely don't think that this is a phone that you should pick up because, for example, its main competition, the iPhone 17 here, it starts at 256 gigs, which I think is great for $799, but the Pixel 10 starts at 128 gigs of storage, and this phone touts 7 years of upgrades, so you should be good until around about 2030, but with a phone getting 7 years of upgrades, 128 gigs of storage just seems a little bit stingy. Like, it might be fine now, but 7 years down the line, you're gonna really fill this thing up. My other issue for the price, even a couple of months on, is just the Tensor G5. I don't want to spend time talking about how this benchmarks because we know the answer is behind almost anything else in the price range. And I still stand by that you don't really notice the difference in speed from the Tensor G5 to the Snapdragon 8 Elite. But the problem is you're paying for a Snapdragon 8 Elite and you're not really getting the exact performance that it can give you. And I said that I don't really notice the processing power, but over Christmas, I did notice it because I tried to game with the Pixel 10 a lot and it gets very hot. There are dropped frames, and honestly, it's not a great experience. And I still stand by the fact that the base phone of any brand has to be able to do almost everything because the people buying this need the phone to do everything. It doesn't have to do everything well, but it does still need to at least give it a good shot. And with gaming, the Tensor G5, especially on the Pixel 10, it just doesn't. While Tensor is fine for the most part, trying to push it even remotely on the base Pixel 10, it does just struggle. But as much as it struggles with those demanding tasks, AI is where this thing excels. I won't bore you too much talking about AI, but Google, it does it best, and in turn, so does the Pixel 10. Compared to the Pros, I can't think of anything this doesn't do that those bigger, more expensive Pros can do, with the exception of something like ProRes Zoom. Gemini, photo editing, Magic Q most of the time works just as well here as it does on the bigger, more expensive Pro and Pro XL. And in day-to-day, honestly, I don't really think that you would ever notice the difference between a Pro level Pixel and the Pixel 10 because the software and Android 16 and Material 3 Expressive and Tensor G5 work so well together that the software is optimized incredibly well. And sometimes I'm sat here using the Pixel 10 thinking, why would I ever need a Pro phone, because software wise this feels exactly like those Pros. The cameras though, that is where you might sit back and realize actually a Pro phone is what I need. We got 3 cameras on the Pixel 10, the ultra-wide, the main and the new 5x telephoto. And I think for most people using this camera most of the time, you get some good photos out of this. You kind of get what you expect out of a base level Pixel. The pictures, they're not amazing, but they're good enough. The main lens, even though it was downgraded from the Pixel 9, which is disappointing, is fine. The processing still gives you a good enough image, especially if you're just sharing that on Instagram and social media. The ultra-wide though is definitely the weakest, and you'd expect it since it dropped to 13 megapixels this year from 48 it had last year. In most daylight situations, it's pretty good, but I did notice over the last few months though, in low light, you do notice the downgraded sensors. And at times the photos are great and match the Pros, but then sometimes they are just bad. I was going to complain more about the ultra-wide downgrade, but then you get that trade-off of a worse ultra-wide for that new 5x telephoto lens. And if I had to pick between an ultra-wide and a 5x telephoto, I think I'd always pick the telephoto lens. The 5x sensor is smaller than it is on the Pros, but it's exactly the same as the one in the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. And while it definitely is not as good of an image as you'd get on those Pro Pixels, it still gets you close enough. The quality, I'd say, isn't amazing on the photos, but I still love having a telephoto lens on a base pixel, and I just think that most people are going to be really happy that they can get much closer now than you could do with that 2x digital zoom on the Pixel 9. And I actually think that having a 5x lens that isn't amazing is actually better than not having one. In my mind, I don't think people buying the base Pixel 10 are overly bothered about the quality of the final image. And these pictures will be fine. If I'm nitpicking, then I don't think these perform overly well in low light scenarios, and I think sometimes the details can be a little bit off, but I have to remind myself, the Pixel 10 is trying to be fine, and it does that, like, it's fine. When you take a quick look at video, fine is the word that I would use again. I haven't used this a ton because I don't think it does a great job, but for quick point and shoot stuff, you won't be overly disappointed. Stabilization with small movement is actually, I found, to be okay, but to continue the trend, low light is not the Pixel 10's best friend, even when that comes to video. Having used this phone now for over a couple of months, the design is something that is a little hit and miss. The core design of this phone I think is great. It's still one of the best looking Android phones that you can get, with that camera visor, the matte side rails, which I just wish the pros had, and while I'm not mad about that glossy back, I can live with it. One thing that I'm going to complain about is the bezels, because just have a look at the size of them on the Pixel 10 here. They are huge, and if you have a look at its like direct competition, which I think is the iPhone 17, you can see the difference between the two, and I just think that the bezels on the Pixel 10 are overly big, and every time I come back to use it, it's the first thing that I notice. It just gives you a little reminder that you aren't using the best that Google can give you. That display though is nice. It has a peak brightness of 3000 nits, which in the time I've been using it, I've never needed it to get any brighter. I suppose the only complaint might be that this display doesn't on paper seem as sharp as anything else that is around it, like the iPhone 17, but I don't know, I've never noticed that. When watching stuff on this phone, I think it's great. I have to mention though that the Pixel 10 feels unnecessarily top heavy. I'm not sure why, but I notice this every single time, and it feels as heavy as the Pixel 10 Pro, and then considerably heavier than the iPhone 17. I'll touch on the battery quickly, and this is actually good, like it's okay. It will get you a full day's battery life easy without any sort of complaints, and you'd expect that because Google did bump up the milliamp hours by just a couple of hundred this time round from the Pixel 9, and it's never going to get you more than a day, not really, but I think I'm okay with that. It's a base Pixel, it's kind of what you expect. I said this at the start of the video, but I have a weird feeling about the Pixel 10. For every good, there is a bad, and that's why this phone confuses me. It has pretty slow charging, the cameras are mostly okay, and the software is great. It's priced pretty badly. I love Pixelsnap, but then Tensor is weak. It's by no stretch a bad phone, but I'm not sure how much I could recommend it to someone. You know what, I think that if Google had just given this 256 gigs of storage, then I wouldn't be as confused by this phone. But for $799, 128 gigs of storage, it's a big ask to recommend this to someone. Even after spending a few months with the Pixel 10 and then writing this video and just really sitting down and thinking about it, I'm still really on the fence. Like, it doesn't do anything bad, but it doesn't really do anything great or standoutish. And I think the best way to look at the Pixel 10 this year from Google is it's a bit of a forgettable year. We're not going to look back in 5 years' time and say that the Pixel 10 was a standout. And this year, it's just one of those upgrades, despite the 5x telephoto lens, that leaves the Pixel 10 in a bit of a strange place. Let me know if you picked up one of the Pixel 10s in the comments. I'm curious to what you think about this. Before you head off, if you can subscribe to the channel, then I'd appreciate it massively. And if you do subscribe, then I'll see you in the next video.